Welcome to Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. This is 2009, Part 4, the conclusion to our very special set of episodes. I'm Brad.
Oh, hi, Brad. I'm Pete.
And I'm Dave.
And it's been a special month. Dave's here to finish it off with us, and Pete gave a little clue as to what we're going to talk about tonight. If you're really into this topic, you might have caught on to that, but most people probably won't. But maybe they will find something new. All right, Dave, tell us what we're talking about.
All right, so tonight is our movie selection, and it's a little bit of a cheat because it is a movie that came out in 2003, and it's a movie called The Room. So many probably know what The Room are, many probably don't. And The Room is what you'd call a cult film. It kind of fits in the genre of so bad it's good. And the reason I picked it for 2009 is, and I sent this out to you guys, but I can trace this back to when I discovered it, and it was reading an Entertainment Weekly article that came out in December of 2008, called just talking about the crazy cult of The Room and how all these people in LA had discovered this movie, were going to midnight screenings and just losing their minds over how insane the movie was. So obviously when I read this article, and in the article they called it the Citizen Kane of bad films, and I couldn't wait to see it. The so bad it's good genre is a genre that I like. I used to watch.
We all have an affection for it, so it fits well.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's a total acquired taste, right? So I do like things like Mystery Science Theater. I can only do so much of it, but when it hits, it really hits with me. But a lot of times, and what's unique about The Room is, a lot of times, even if it hits in a way where I'm not dying to, watch it again and again and again. And The Room is just different that way. And actually, I once described, when I was back in school in the last couple of years here getting my teaching degree, there was one time we were talking about like things that we liked, and I brought up The Room, and somebody asked me about it, and I said, it's so hard to describe. It's like a lightning strike of a movie in that it'll never happen again. You'll never have this guy who has no understanding of
There's only one Tommy Wiseau.
Well, right.
Perfect
that has
storm.
a thick accent that does not understand human, like he's an alien. and he had the money to make this movie in a vacuum, and he had the ego to write a movie that was supposed to prove what a great guy he was and how the whole world has screwed him, and was able to bring people along for that ride and make a, when I say competent movie, he made a movie that is just utterly incompetent every step of the way.
To the Hollywood movie.
It's just delicious. It's American movie. So, but that's the thing is, it's so because of that, it's just this such unique thing that, that won't happen again. And again, for me, you would think that like over time that might get old. For me, it has not. And we've watched it in small settings. And I think that's the thing, before I throw it over to you guys. So for me, this movie is just, when I say that this movie's important, that sounds so dumb, but it really is important in my life, in that it has brought so much fun to our group of friends, whether we're watching it in a small group setting, whether we go to a midnight screening at the Uptown. There's just, I have a lot of great memories of this, including Brad, your wife making shirts for us with all the quotes on the back.
Yes. I didn't write. We have shirts, homemade shirts.
We have Room shirts that we've gotten comments on before at the screenings. So that's the thing, is it's ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not making the argument that this is a great movie. I've actually read articles where people have made that argument, and I think that those people are insane.
That's
dumb. But it is something that has brought me just a huge amount of joy. And when I think about that, and like you guys have mentioned this in other episodes, if this were to equate to 10 people discovering the room with their group of friends, it'd be totally worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Pete, Brad, I'll throw it over to you first on that.
So yeah, it's so like you said, so bad it's good. I've been watching things my whole life like that. I get sucked into lots of TV shows that are really dumb. I think they're dumb, but yet they entertain me endlessly. All the way back to, I mean, a good example would like the Brady Bunch. I've watched the Brady Bunch my whole life, and it's not quite the same thing. But the Brady Bunch is really stupid. There's some really bad episodes, yet I've seen every episode 10 times, and like it's memorized and it's a huge part of my life. And my brother and sister watched it, and so I love that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of movies from the 80s that kind of fit that, where I love getting into that stuff, and finding the stuff that not everybody knows, or that I just take it a different way than they do. And Mystery Science Theater was something that I never really got into, but like I feel like I should have. It feels perfect for things I like, because I love sitting around with you guys and watching things and just making jokes, and because we think we're so funny. And
Hence podcast.
yeah, and so yeah, and that led us to this right here. And so I love that you found this, and that we all brought it in, and like I completely forgot about our shirts when I was like taking all my notes here. So I didn't even watch the movie again for this podcast, because I don't need to. I've seen it so many times. I know every line like so well that there's nothing I was going to get.
You think about everything, Brad.
Yeah. But those shirts, we had those shirts.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's become part of our whole lives. And we've seen so many different types of viewings, and each one is really unique and special, all to the point where when Tommy himself came to the Uptown Theater in Minneapolis like 2 years ago, we weren't going to miss that. Like we were going to be there no matter what. And it wasn't even about like, I didn't expect anything special from meeting him. He's, but to get that picture, that meant so much to get that picture. And we wore our shirts, and he saw us wearing our shirts, and he made a comment about our shirts, and other people just love those when they see them. And when you find other people too that love something like this, because it's kind of like a band that you like. There's a lot of bands that I like that aren't big bands.
It's the
when you go to a concert,
good way to put it.
And you meet all these other people who are just insane freaks about them, like you are. It's so fun, and it's so cool to see that, because you don't know they're out there. And then it's like, wow, it's not just me. And so that's what I love about this.
I have been in public places before where all of a sudden I'll hear somebody say, like, oh, hi, Denny, like that or something, like they'll say, oh, hi, somebody's name, and it'll make me laugh. And I won't approach them, but I'll always think like, I wonder if they're all Room fans. I wonder if that's what they're, but because the way they're saying it makes me think that.
Yeah.
Part of it is too, though, Dave, you were ahead of the game on it, because I think a lot of people caught on to it after The Disaster Artist came out, which was a good movie that was up for awards and everything like that, and a more well-known movie. We had heard about it, and that's part of what made it so great, is that we had been in on this joke for a
decade.
8 to 10 years before it came out.
Well, the timeline on that, Pete, is the Disaster Artist book, which is, I would highly recommend if anyone's interested in what we're talking about tonight.
I will second that.
That came out in 2013. So I discovered this in 2009, and that book breathed like a whole new life into my enjoyment of it. And because then you got brought behind the curtain of what a tyrant Johnny was the whole time he made the movie. And then what you're talking about, the Disaster Artist movie, when did that come out? Was that 16?
No, it's not that old. It's like only 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. So maybe 17 or 18?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. And that's the thing, is even
2017.
It's so funny. The Disaster Artist book, that was even one, as much of a fan of The Room as I am, I remember discovering that on just a random table at Barnes and Noble, just kind of browsing and being like, "Oh my God, Greg Sestero wrote a book."
Well, and so when we'd seen this movie several times by then, and
Yep.
when you brought that book home, well, we don't live together, but when you brought that book home, and you told me you had this book, I was dumbfounded because I'm like, wait, there's a book about this? Like, there's that much of a story? I didn't
How
understand it
much
at
of
first,
a yeah?
and I couldn't wait to read it. And I loved the book, and I loved when the movie came out because it breathed a whole new life into it. It brought all these other people back into it. One of my best friends, Adam, he found all these clips of the movie and got into it. But then that movie, he came with us to that. It was like adding another person to our little world. And so it was just, I mean, that kind of stuff. It's just every couple years something new seems to come along, and it's really been fun to be there for the ride.
And that's the thing is, anytime, Gifford's not on tonight, but we know that he hasn't. I would love to sit down and watch that with him.
Oh yeah, we
him
will
seeing
definitely
it for
do
the
that
first
someday.
time.
Oh yeah, you got to give. It's like you're a tour guide.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Showing him.
Well,
all right.
And we'll get into some of the challenges. So I did think about like watching it with my sister Mandy. She was down this weekend, and the time just never came up. But I did warn her. I said, "Hey, if we get a chance, we'll watch it." And I'm like, "You got to give me a half hour on it." I'm like, just like watch the first half hour. It's going to be uncomfortable, but then after that it'll be smooth sailing. We'll get into why. But
Well, and
Brad,
it is
you want
tough
to just
because
talk real quick about your favorite viewing experience on that?
Okay, so we're going to talk about our favorite viewing experiences. So, that first time we went to the Uptown and watched it with a whole bunch of other people was just a real eye opener. And so, I mean, there were so many things you had no idea that were going to happen that night. But it was kind of like fate. So I went to a movie at the Egan Movie Theater, and there was this big sign for The Room. And this was so it's 2016. And there was going to be this Room showing in that theater, which is not usually where it is because it's always in the Uptown Theater. And it said Riff Tracks, and I'm like, what the hell's that? And then I saw the date, January 28th. I'm like, holy shit, that's my 40th birthday, and this movie is playing that night. Obviously, I know what we're gonna do. So it was all just set up that way. But then we go. So Riff Tracks is kind of like this Mystery Science Theater thing. You go and you watch it, but it's put on by was there like 3 people or 2 people?
It's 3 comedians, but
It's comedians.
It's the
Yeah,
same
they're watching the
people
movie,
that do
and they're just making comments.
It's
And
the same
so
concept, but without the storyline is all it's the exact same
they're
concept.
just not robots, but it is those.
Yeah.
Do you know that for sure, Pete, that it's those guys?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, yeah, I do think we had found that out. But so they're just making comments about the movie, and so you're watching the movie, but you're getting this whole other. It's from a comedian, so and it was I don't think I've ever laughed as much in my entire life as those 2 hours there. I was crying, I was in pain. The whole place was just, and it wasn't because of the movie. These guys were hilarious, and they brought in new comments, new things that you'd never heard before.
Right.
And I would give anything to watch that again, that version, because I don't know if you can, and I really would like to see it.
It helps if you already have seen and kind of know the movie like we did. It
Yes.
actually is that much funnier. And I wouldn't, I would not recommend it, but like for that to be your first time to see the movie, it might not carry as much weight as it did for us.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think it was perfect because you miss so much because of all the comments and all the laughing. You miss so much,
right?
That it's hard to hear it all.
To that point, Pete, normally whenever it's been somebody new, like Gifford, right? We would tell them, dude, you got to watch it with just a couple of us first, because you got to see the movie. Because if you go to like a midnight screening or something like that, Riff Tracks, there is so much going on that I think the time you're describing, Brad, where Adam came along, I remember thinking like, I don't think I've heard any of the dialogue in the first half hour here.
Yeah, there was
because you got all the Uptown crowd just going nuts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was my favorite viewing. it was different than the others, and it was like a special day. I mean, not that turning for big deal, but like, hey, and
It's a big deal.
basically, just about every single one of my friends went to it. Only a couple people couldn't go. My wife came, who she was the only woman there, but she came along and she had a great time and she drove and everything. And it was just
Was
a
that-
really great night.
Was that Kim's first time seeing it?
No, I think she had seen it. Well,
I'm wondering, did the
God, it
shirts
might have been
come,
the first time. I
did
don't
the
know if
shirts
she ever
come
watched
out
it.
of that viewing?
What?
Did the shirts come out of that viewing?
You gave them to us a couple of weeks beforehand.
Oh yeah, we had them to wear that night.
Okay, then it's not the first time, because I remember Kim made those shirts after the first time she saw the movie, shortly after.
I don't remember that. I thought maybe we could have just.
I'm
given
pretty
her the
sure,
quotes
because
instead.
you gave those to us we were out in Maple Grove.
For
Pete.
my birthday party. It
Yes.
must have been this year, so it was that long, because my birthday is in February, yours is in January, so we must have had those shirts almost a year.
Wait a minute. No. I think here's the thing. I think we saw it for my birthday, and the shirts were made after that, and then Pete's birthday's a month after mine, and that's when I handed them out. So we didn't
Then
actually have them.
I bet that was Kim's first time
Yeah,
seeing it. Then.
it was. It's probably the only time she's ever actually watched it all the way through. But she had a good time.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a good sport.
How
Pete,
about
what was
you,
your
Pete?
favorite viewing?
Well, I just remember that one definitely. All the same things that Brad said about that particular viewing, because I was there too, and it was. I could also say is about the hardest I've ever laughed in my life. But also the first time, I do remember the first time that I had ever seen it, which wasn't the same time that you had seen it, but I saw it with you guys. My first time seeing it was we went up to Fargo to run the Fargo Marathon.
And was it just the three of us?
It was
Yep.
just the three of us.
Yeah, well, that's a
Yep.
special time.
It is a special time.
Is that the same one we watched, Teen Wolf?
Yeah, I think so.
It was the same weekend, yeah.
All right.
Just watching that movie, and Brad, I remember when it was first starting, like the opening credits were rolling, and Brad said, "Pete, you have no idea what you're about to get yourself." And I was like, "Okay," and then it starts, and I'm just kind of watching and trying to figure it out what's going on here. But then it's like, as the movie goes on, I'm just laughing harder and harder and harder, because you see what's going on. It's like, oh my God. And then when he gets to the point where he does the infamous, I didn't hit her. I did not hit her. I did not. That line.
Oh, hi, Mark.
I was done. I was like, oh my God, that's the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And what's funny about it is because, like, when you go back to even Brady Bunch, it actually, I mean, obviously it was a great show for its time. And the reason that it seems corny and funny when we watch it is just because we were in a different time, and in the 60s, whenever it was made.
I don't know. I think it was pretty corny and not very well received when it was on back then too, like critically. It was not a very good show. But, but kind of like, I don't know, it's like Full House was when we were teens. I equate it to that. It's not a great show, but
Yeah.
sorry, whatever.
Okay, fair enough. But what makes it so funny is that Wiseau, he's the creator, the writer, the director, and the lead actor in this, and all of the producer, everything. And if you haven't seen the movie, he is a really, really super weird guy. But the fact that he took it so seriously, and he thought that he really had something big here. Like he thought he was going to win Oscars, I think.
Oh, the proof is he paid for it to be in a movie theater for 2 weeks so that it would qualify for the Oscars.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was the only theater it was ever in, and obviously didn't work out.
But it did, though. In the long run, it worked out perfectly
Yeah.
because it was such a perfect movie, but for a much different reason. And I don't know if he felt like, he's getting laughed at or whatever, but it doesn't matter because he's still making the money. People are watching the movie to this day. And he's laughing all over the bank in a way.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if
He got to go to the Oscars too that year with James Franco.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was really something else.
One thing I love in that when Franco it might have been at the Golden Globes.
Oh, you know what? I think that was it. Maybe.
At the Golden Globes, he won, and he had Tommy come up with
Yeah.
And at one point, Tommy's going up to the mic, and he's like, and Franco like
Pushes him away.
no, and he starts laughing in a way of like, I'm not letting this happen.
I was disappointed in that because I would have loved to hear what he had to say.
Just give him 10 seconds.
Here's the thing, and that's yeah. So Pete, do you have anything else before I'm gonna jump in? Just to
go ahead.
Okay, so and that's what I'll say is, so it's such a fine line for me with him. When you say that, I don't think I would have wanted him to get on the mic because the whole thing is he's trying to own the incompetence of the movie, but doing it in his own way. And so, Brad, even before we started the call, we were talking about this. So I watched the trailers on the Blu-ray. I just watched the movie the other night, and I watched the trailers on the Blu-ray. And I mean, here is word for word in the one short trailer. It's a bunch of the scenes, and the narration over it says, "The best movie of the year. Experience this quirky new black comedy. It's a riot. A film with the passion of Tennessee Williams." And that's the thing is, on the one hand, he has to acknowledge that people don't love this because it's great, right? They love it because it's dumb. And yet he's still got to have that line about Tennessee Williams because in his mind, he's still Marlon Brando yelling, "Stella!" And like, that's, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa." So I don't love Why So. And actually, so when I think about my favorite and least favorites, they're kind of all in the same place, and it's Uptown Theater. So Brad, you brought up, so I think it would have been the second or third time we ever went there for a midnight screening. You brought up the audience participation thing. And with that, I there again, I can take or leave some of it. So what I will say is, like, I think it was the third time we went there. It was the time that Hummel brought his football and we played a little game of catch, kind of like they do in the movie. But that time I specifically remember, and the crowd there that night was great because the crowd wasn't oversaturating everything in there, but they were yelling funny stuff, right? And that was the first time I ever saw people do the, during the party scene where, the camera zooms in on Tommy, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, he kind of goes like, "Oh," like waves to the corner of the screen for no reason. So as it's zooming up to Tommy, all these people ran up to the upper right corner and they're like, Tommy, over here. And he silently like waves to them. I think it's right before he goes, "We're expecting."
Yeah, I remember that. And it was like, what are they doing? Because we had never noticed it. And that is one of the funniest gags of the whole participation.
I thought that was so funny. But like, I'll tell you right now, one thing that like is totally, I think, overblown, and it's one of the things, like, the cult of the room loves it. The spoons thing I've always thought was kind of stupid, like throwing the spoons and why it's in there. It's just because there's a couple of set pieces, like frames in there with spoons. And I get that that's ridiculous, but like, there's things like that I don't love. But that, like, the night that Hummel had his football, we were there, and the way the crowd was, like, it was perfect in that the crowd didn't overpower the movie. It just enhanced the movie. The flip side of that is there have been nights where I've been there and it's like, could you guys all shut up? We can't hear anything that's going on.
Yeah, I've been very annoyed at certain showings.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think the first time Adam went, I do remember.
I think that was one of the nights.
For 40 minutes, like, I haven't heard a damn word that's played here. And there, and that's the thing. I know there's been once or twice where I've seen a group of like the same guys where I think they just go there and they're so loud. But then the only other one, I didn't love the night that we met Tommy. And I get that it's just like, it's to get a picture and this and that. Again, this goes to the whole, he was only letting people that bought stuff go up and say hi to him. Pete, actually, you pulled me in. I was walking through the lobby when you and Hummel got up to him, and you guys pulled me over, and he was not happy about that. And I was like, I don't care about meeting Tommy Wiseau. Like, what is he gonna say to me?
No, but she just wanted that picture, and I did
Well-
the same thing. I didn't buy anything, and I was able to sneak in there. And it's just that thing for posterity that, like, I met this guy. It's part of the whole thing. He had nothing to say, but he did mention our shirts, which was nice.
And then at the beginning of the movie, they gave him the mic and he talked for a while, and I was like, why? Like, what is and he did. He tried to like do some comedy, and it's like, dude, you're not funny. Like you think you're funny, but you're not. So anyway, so let's get into.
I have the autographed T-shirt, by the way, in my closet. I could have worn it. I haven't actually worn it since, just because it's autographed, and I don't want to have to launder it. So I have never worn it. I still got the tag.
You should frame it and hang it up in your house.
I should. My wife would be all over that one.
and then put a picture of both of his logos on each side of it.
Why
Wiseau Films.
Framing a shirt that says "Me Underwears" and cheap. All right. Okay. So I do want to get, because this movie is so ripe for like getting out of control on quoting lines and stuff like that. So let's talk about certain elements first. So the first element that I want to talk about is, the couple of things that I think just make this so unique, that one is that the story was written by this guy that just does not get human interactions, right? So I want to talk a little bit about like cases where the storytelling was just odd, but then also he made this movie and he had no experience. So the movie, although but then there's the whole element of that, beyond the writing of the movie, it's just the actual making of the movie. And the fact that he's this guy that was able to fund this on his own, make it on his own. And obviously when you watch The Disaster Artist, there were like professional people that were trying to help him, and he was a tyrant. So from a movie making perspective, there are dumb things that also happen. And then at that point, and this kind of goes to storytelling too, but we'll get into a little bit of the lines. But the first one I do want to talk, let's actually start with the movie making part. When you think about like just dumb things and how the movie was made. So Pete, Brad, I'll throw it to you first. When you think about how the movie was actually made, what is one of your things where you go, this was just insane?
Well, to use the word insane, I wrote down. So first, just the whole scene at the flower shop. I wrote, it's just pure insanity. So if you've seen the movie, or if you ever watch this movie, there's a scene in a flower shop. It lasts about 15 seconds, but there's about a minute of dialogue stuffed in there, just rapid fire, doesn't make any sense. And it's the funniest part of the whole thing, really. And it's so dumb and it's so bad. So that's one thing that stands out right away.
One of which though is, and Pete, you had referenced this earlier, this guy looks like Dracula walking around. He's always wearing a suit. He's got really long, dark hair. He's very pale, wears super dark shades. And when he walks in, so this man looks like Dracula. And the first thing the lady behind the counter says, oh, hi. And she goes, oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. And I remember in The Disaster Artist, that's where Seth Rogen goes, who the hell is not going to recognize
Nobody else looks
him?
The other thing I wrote down for movie making is just so this movie has just constant overhead shots of San Francisco, of just the same landmarks between every scene. It takes you to a pan of the Golden Gate or these row houses or Alcatraz, and it never stops. And it's just like, holy crap, it's just too much.
Well, and on this last viewing, watching it again all by myself was kind of interesting because it helped me slow things down a little bit. To that point, Brad, the final, like his whole birthday and all that ending, you don't realize, and I think because we go to like a lot of the midnight screenings where the crowd is so amped up, you're all laughing and everything. That whole bit there is so weird in that it's like little snippet of dialogue. Then we're going to show the Disney store. little snippet of dialogue. Now we're going to show some high rises. Little, like, I mean, it's weird how little they had to say during that whole time, and how they felt they couldn't string together. I mean, it's literally Mark and Lisa are dancing. Tommy breaks it up. Or Johnny breaks it up. Then they go to a thing and come back, and Johnny walks back in and he's like, "Don't touch me, motherfucker," like that. And it's like, why? What did they need to pan away for, or cut away for?
So yeah, that's a good one then.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What about you?
What to me, I mean, there's a million things I could go on and on, but one thing that stands out to me is that anytime a new character comes in, I mean, they just come in. A lot of times they just leave the apartment door open, they say their piece, and then they leave. It's like they didn't come over to his apartment for any real purpose or anything. They just say what they had to say and then get out of there.
And several of these characters have no impact at all on the plot. You don't even know why they were in the movie, period.
Right.
And it's just like, what the hell?
Well, and the best was the psychologist actually changed actors midway through the
oh yeah,
midway through the movie, and you're like,
talk
who is
about
this guy?
that a little bit. We'll talk because Peter, you're always playing psychologist. We'll talk about that guy because the second Peter, the guy who's always people refer to as second Peter, in the credits, I wanted to go look that up. He's actually credited as, I believe it's Steven. So, because they never say his name, but it makes no sense, his character, unless that guy is Peter, right?
Right.
But it is
introduced. He's introduced about in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and he's like has this big influential part, like he's trying to influence him. Like, who is this guy?
Well, and everything he's saying is like, this is gonna tear all of our friendships apart. And unless he's Peter, that doesn't make sense because Peter's the only other guy that's been introduced.
But they didn't even make any effort to make him look like the original guy, because the original Peter wore glasses. You would think that he would wear glasses and dress the same or something.
Right.
He totally was a different guy altogether
than the original.
He is. Not that we rate dudes on Pop Culture Yearbook, but anyway.
On this screening for sure, I wrote a note. I was like, wow, second Peter is a horrible actor even for the standards of this movie. It's laughable how bad that guy. I feel like I'm sitting on an atomic bomb.
He doesn't have very good lines to use either, so
he doesn't. But then he's even bad at delivering them.
Yeah, but they don't help.
So...
I don't think he did much for his career, his acting career. Whoever that
did anybody?
Well, no.
Well,
no,
Greg Sestero.
Really. I don't think it's because of his acting in the movie.
No.
So
he was smart enough to write a book, and that was a good deal for him.
For me, when it comes to movie making incompetence, I'm gonna say it's every time a football appears in the movie. And there's two specific scenes. The tuxedo football scene and how weirdly that's put together. This kind of is a cheat in the storytelling piece, because the fact that never comes back, or like, why were they in tuxedos, is so weird. But the other scene, so that alleyway scene where Mike tells the Me Underwear story and they all start playing football, they are playing football in a set where their camera is back far enough to only see like two of them at a time. So the way that there's four of them all apart, and when we say they're playing football, they're all
throwing it underhanded about 3 feet away from each other.
Right. But even with that, so if the three of us were all standing 3 feet away from each other, we'd be 9 feet apart in total. So a competent movie would move the camera back so it could capture 9 feet wide. This movie decided to capture about 4.5 of those feet. So you have somebody throwing a football off the camera, talking to somebody off the camera, then catching it back, and the dialogue is all underwear. Underwear? What, are you kidding me? It's insane.
That's Me Underwears.
Me Underwears. So, okay, so then let's talk about storytelling incompetence. If you guys want, I can throw one out right away, and it's a big one. Claudette, basically announcing that she's dying and that she has breast cancer
I
at the
just wrote
beginning of the
down
movie.
one of my examples is anything with Claudette is
Oh,
storytelling.
she's fantastic.
That's
I loved her.
I mean, she just there's nothing there but yeah, the breast cancer line, that is
It's
a very
official.
famous line if you know the movie.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the movie, we're not making fun of breast cancer by any means. But the way that it's worked into the movie.
I do have
It's
one other,
hilarious.
sorry, from a movie making perspective, one other thing. The whole Chris R scene. So when Denny, this little boy that is weird, a drug dealer named Chris R shows up inexplicably, and he's called Chris R.
Do
Holds
they
a gun
call
to
him Chris
Denny
R in the
and his
movie, or
money.
is that just like in his credit? Is that even mentioned?
No. Denny says, "Hi,
Chris
Chris
R.
R."
Yeah, he says.
He called,
And there's a
okay,
joke about
okay.
that in The Disaster Artist too.
He's like,
All
why am
He
right,
I?
says, "Can I
right.
just call him
R.
Chris?" And
It's
Tommy,
his name.
no, his name is Chris R.
Name's Chris R. So, but in that scene, the other one is editing wise, when all the people are coming up to the roof and then they pull Chris R back, it's like a clown car. Like, Denny's getting the gun held on him. The camera goes back and Claudette and Lisa are there. Or first, actually, it's Johnny and Mark are there. Then it goes back and Claudette and Lisa are there. Then they go and they're yelling at him. And Johnny and Mark both arrive in weird cuts too. It's like a clown car of people coming back and forth.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's the one I forgot to write down that I thought of as we were talking. Anything on the roof, especially that scene, that's the movie making incompetence. The green screen, it's the most fake thing you've ever seen.
Yes.
Everything
Well,
that takes place on this roof is just bizarre.
The perfect example is where Mark gets all pissed off and is about to throw the one dude off the roof, right?
Peter.
Like he holds him over it's Peter. He's about to hold it. He's holding his head over the roof like he's threatening to kill him. And then all of a sudden he's just chill.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And actually, so let's do this. So the storytelling thing I think is going to play into some of the best lines in the movie. So give me like your favorite storytelling wise or lines. Well,
I had two things down for storytelling besides Claudette. One is when they have the big birthday party, and she's like, "Let's go outside," and they go outside for no reason. And then they're out there like, "Let's go back inside," and they go in and out for no reason, and none of it makes sense.
to go as a big pod.
Yeah, and
Right.
they do. They move like together, like
a normal party. Some people are outside, some people are inside, but nope, they got to go.
Is, when he wants to spy, and he sets some weird answering machine tape, and that's just going to somehow record everything that happens in their lives for the rest. I mean, forever, and never stop and never run out.
I will record everything.
It doesn't make any sense. So those are the other two I had down.
On that one, that plays into one of my favorite crowd participation things, though, because in that scene, Johnny is eavesdropping.
You're talking about Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I will record everything, and he goes down the little spiral staircase. And when he's doing that, everyone in the theater is bum, 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 while he's setting up this stupid little recorder. And
That
then
is a great thing.
the way he strolls away, like, I got him. It's just
Yeah, afterwards he does.
Yeah. He looks back a couple times, even though he's at home all by himself. So yeah, I do love that. So
Pete, did you have any other stories?
Well, the same thing. I don't know if you'd call this storytelling or just bad. The thing that I always laugh at is right after where you just talked about, where they all go outside of the party. Lisa came up with that idea because now everybody is outside. Well, now you and me are here inside.
Well,
so then
she's
they can
very
mess
proud
around
of
now. And then he's like, oh, like brilliant idea. Like, and
You're
then they
referring to
just going
Mark,
at it
not
on
Tommy,
Mark.
because she's an evil woman who's cheating on Tommy,
This
and that's
is-
the whole story. If you want to know
this
the
is
plot
the
of this
apex.
movie,
Uh-oh.
Tommy's future wife is cheating on him, and she's the devil. And that's the
If you'd like to know the plot of this movie, so would we.
and by the way, it's his future wife, not fiance,
I said
because
future
this
wife.
movie's been written by an alien. And that's the thing is so many of the characters, and that's where like they had to hold to the script because everybody sounds like him in the movie. They all say weird things, right? And so it's things that are clearly written by Tommy. I have so many.
And clearly he was the dictator because at some point somebody would have to say, you know what, this line doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, they tried. So watching The Disaster Artist again, I mean, if that movie's accurate, as I'm sure most of it is because he wrote the book, there were scenes where they tried. So if you're talking about lines, one of my favorite lines is the "ha ha ha ha, what a story!"
What a story!
Which comes after.
Are you sure you want to be laughing at that?
About a woman getting
beaten up so badly she had to go to a hospital on Guerrero Street.
And he laughs after that and says, "What a story!" And in the movie, Seth Rogen keeps saying, trying to get him to do it over and over without laughing because it's not a funny story. And so that's a great line. It's a memorable line, and it fits in with just the insanity of the whole movie and the fact that he has no concept of anything. And how did he? He said that it's the reason why he laughs. Oh, it's human nature. It's human nature.
It's what people do.
Yeah. And that's how he explained when Claudette says she has breast cancer. He explains that as it's it's twist. It's twist.
It's twist. Yeah, it's twist. But
it's just in there to be this twist.
But if it's a twist, then it should have some sort of a climax to that story, and it never even gets brought up again.
Yeah,
she changes her own daughter changes the subject immediately, and that's it.
Well, those are some of my favorite lines, and it's because they are just so out of nowhere and they just make no sense.
So I've got other like quotable lines that I want to get to, but I did write down, and I was like pausing to write some of this. So "You're tearing me apart, Lisa," which is like a really big moment in the movie that people make fun of. But that scene, and then the scene with Peter, the original Peter, where they're talking about beta breakers. I want to just read a little bit of this dialogue real quick, just so that like you can. So basically, in the tearing me apart scene, right? He goes up and he's like, "I've never hit you," and he does that, by the way, right after shoving her down to the couch. Right? She's getting up to leave, and he shoves her down. He's like, "I never hit you," and then she goes, "Why are you so hysterical?" And he's like, "Do you understand life? Do you?" And then her response, which comes up all the time in this movie, "Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it."
And then he is like, at that point, she's leaving. She's going up the spiral staircase, and he's like in this weird posture. He looks like he's paralyzed, right? And he goes, "Don't worry, Lisa. I still love you. Good night, Lisa."
He's like drunk. He's totally, that's the thing.
Then,
he's drunk from the scotchka.
So beta breakers, and this is one of those things where they're having, like, I do think it's funny that they're constantly, the guys in the movie are always talking about women, but they're all discussing how hot Lisa is, including, by the way, during the birthday party, there's some rando dude that goes, "Lisa is so hot tonight, looks so hot tonight." And he says it to his girlfriend. Like, who is doing that? But anyway, so they're, when Peter's over, Johnny's talking about his girl problems. Mark comes in. They're all, Mark's talking about that maybe he's met a girl and this and that. But then it randomly goes to, "Hey, are you going to run Beta Breakers?" Which, obviously is a race in San Francisco. But then, Mark goes, "Are you guys going to run Beta Breakers?" And Johnny's like, "Oh, remember the one with the big tits, the blondie one?" And Mark goes, "How about the one with the bridal gown and the sign?" "Will you marry me? I thought I'd take her up on that. I never ate so much. Yeah, the barbecue chicken was delicious, right?" And Peter jumps in and he goes, "You guys proved my point. you're both weird. And that's the thing, is like I'm listening to this dialogue going, God damn, he's so weird. Like the fact that he typed all this out is so insane. So, but I have to say, by far, my favorite line in the whole movie is when they're at the cafe and they're talking, and he talks about getting a new client at the bank, and Mark's like, "What client? I can't tell you. It's confidential. Anyway, how's your sex life?"
Yep, that totally slipped my mind on that one.
Oh my God.
Another just out of nowhere nonsensical line.
It's just the
Doesn't add anything to the movie at all. Like,
it's a great line. It's such a great line as far as just being so out there and dumb, but it's the setup too.
it is a setup. I guess Mark does have the explanation then.
Right. And that's the thing. I don't know. At the bank. Mark wants to know, like, none of this makes sense. Why would he tell him? Why does Mark care? And then, I cannot tell you, it's confidential. Anyway, how is your sex life? Like dudes say.
You could go on and on and on with
that's something too that could have been worked into a larger plot. Like, like this big account was somebody that came up later in the movie, or I don't know. But
yeah, it
never got revisited. You never find out.
For me, it's not just really one line, because we could name every line in the movie, but it's the
what
whole
if the
flower shop scene. The flower shop scene, that if you kind of count that as one line, that's my favorite.
Yes.
What if the big account was that jerk Harold?
That jerk Harold.
Think about that. That would have been a plot twist. That would have been a great plot twist.
It's twist. I do the whole. The fact in the flower shop scene that at the end he says hi to the doggy, pats it on the head, and so that's the only other thing that drives me nuts in this movie is everyone's got to just opine about what a stand-up great guy Johnny is, because that's Tommy writing like, hey world, have a big boner for me, and that's the thing is, of course, the flower lady has to say, "You're my favorite customer," while he's walking out of the room. I just, it's so dumb.
Speaking of incompetence and everything, we didn't even bring up yet Denny, and the fact that there's this like maybe 16-year-old kid who looks like he's 30 and nobody knows what he is, who tries to come in on them while they're having sex and watches them and wants to kiss Lisa for no reason. That whole character is the most bizarre human being in the whole play, really.
Right.
In the movie.
Is he a neighbor?
And apparently he's a drug addict, too.
And he's a drug addict.
Yeah.
What kind of drugs?
You're not my effing mother.
What kind of money?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
I think that covers it, man.
Well, so I got to tell you guys, when I watched it tonight, or the other night, so I was telling Brad this, Pete, but on the Blu-ray, how many chapters? This movie is an hour and 39 minutes long. How many chapters do you think are on the Blu-ray?
15. I don't know. I have no idea.
42.
Oh my God.
6, which is high. That means there's a chapter for every 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So I do, if you guys will just indulge me, I'm going to read some of the funnier chapter titles. Chapter 3.
Well, this will help the audience understand the plot of the movie, too, if they've never seen it.
So this is early, and you just referenced this. Chapter 3. Denny wants to watch. Chapter 10. Lisa orders pizza. And actually, 10 through 14, they were on a roll here, because
is chapter 11, Lisa already ordered the pizza?
You think about everything. Chapter 11, Denny wants a kiss. Chapter 12, dozen of red roses. Chapter 13, I'm tired, I'm wasted.
I just don't care anymore.
Chapter 14, just cancer. I love
that was his own chapter.
Cancer.
She brought it up once, and that was, oh my God.
I'm sure it's the whole scene where she's talking to her
daughter.
Well,
obviously, but that wasn't even. It wasn't even the main point of the scene.
That's the funny thing. she says that she's dying of breast cancer, and it's not even the focus of that conversation.
Right. The focus is that she lies about that Johnny hit her.
Right. He did not.
I mean,
hit
I'm pretty
her.
sure after hearing this that when they made the DVD, the movie had become this thing by then, and the people that made these chapter titles clearly were in on the joke and trying to be funny with some of them.
Well,
Right.
okay.
That's probably true.
So chapter 17 is Chris R. Chapter 19 is I did not hit her. I did not. Chapter 22 is underwear. Chapter 24, I'll record everything. Chapter 28, cheap, cheap, cheap. Chapter 29, football in tuxedos. And one of my favorites, chapter 37, we're expecting.
Well, now you know the plot of the movie.
Yeah. So that kind of gives you a run through
What's the last chapter called where he kills himself?
Oh my God, you just gave it away.
Betrayal. We'll see about that, which is right after he says, "In a few minutes, bitch." And then rage. And you know what? That's one of the last things I got to bring up. I love, one of my favorite things in the movie is him trashing his home at the end. It's the weirdest, like he's overcome with rage and he's just growling, walking around his house. But it's the laziest trashing you've ever seen.
It's like he's just going through the motions. He doesn't even know how to act that.
Well, right. And that is, so, we talked about a lot of things. We didn't talk about the fact that there's almost 8 minutes of sex scenes in the first half hour of the movie.
Yes.
The fact that
they're not good.
Body
there's 8 minutes of sex scenes, about 5 minutes of original sex scenes, and maybe 3 minutes of reused sex scenes.
Sex scenes. So if unless you guys have a couple other things, I can kind of wrap a little bit of that or anything else.
No, I think we can. I've got we can wrap this up.
If you're listening and you haven't seen the movie, just be sure to watch the movie. You will not be disappointed at all.
You won't be disappointed. Well, and so that goes.
But as you said, everybody needs to know how bad those sex scenes are at the beginning and how long they are. And once you
do not have children around.
Then you can enjoy the movie for what it is after that, because those scenes are painful. They're not sexy.
They're funny in their own right, though, too.
Well, at first, but they go on for so long that they don't work that way.
Yeah, they are hard to get through, and that's the thing. And so when I think about like kind of the larger ecosystem, so I talk about the Disaster Artist, but so one of my favorite podcasts is How Did This Get Made? And the whole, the conceit of that podcast is that they find bad movies that they watch and then talk about, and the question is like, how did this get made, right? And so How Did This Get Made covered this once, and Greg Sestero was on that episode. We all listened to it on the way
home from Fargo.
Yeah,
probably that same weekend. We watched it with Pete, and then we listened to it. It was a great weekend.
Right. And that's the thing is, and so one of the, and that's the thing is, when I think about, like, we talk about things that you see people do at the midnight screenings and things like that, that's what adds or builds to this, is like the community nature of it. So like in the How Did This Get Made episode, one of the funniest lines I've ever heard is they had a guy on along with Sestero that was like a journalist who had interviewed Tommy and stuff like that. And he described, they were talking about, like, June was just like, oh, those sex scenes are so hard. Like, I can't make heads or tails of his body. And the journalist goes, he kind of looks like if you put an action figure in a microwave, but not for too long. And it's like to me, that
you
was,
couldn't
like,
have a more perfect description.
And that made me laugh so hard. And I thought, oh my God, he nailed that. It was just so funny. But yeah, so I can get into,
like maybe what happened to his brain too. He put it in the microwave, but not for too long, and it led to him writing this movie.
Not long enough where he melted it where he couldn't write.
Yeah. Just enough to create this.
Just enough for him to write badly.
So if you, and again, it's funny. Like I didn't have any hesitations recommending watching The Room with any of you guys, but it is the kind of thing, like I don't like recommend this to a lot of people just because it is one of those genres that is an acquired taste, right?
Right.
But if
you brought that up earlier, and I was gonna say, so like my brother-in-law, we love all the same stuff, and we watch all the same things. But like they've never shown any interest in this. They see me talk about it and post things about it, and my brother-in-law Craig is like, "What? I don't get it." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, you don't get it, I guess. I wish you did, but you don't." And I'm not going to get him to watch it, and it's not going to be something that we share.
right.
But
Well,
that's because he doesn't get into that kind of stuff.
and if it is, and that's the thing is, if it's if somebody's not into it, it's a brutal viewing experience. Like you wouldn't, if you don't like this kind of stuff, like do not watch this. You will not enjoy it, right? And
I talked to, so just on that one, I talked to one guy that I know that you don't know him, but he actually has the movie on DVD. And I'm like, I was talking to him. I'm like, hey, what do you think about it? All of that kind of stuff. He's like, it's okay. It's like, how do you have that opinion of the movie?
No.
It's either the most hilarious movie that you've ever seen, or it's the worst movie that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
How do you watch it? It's like you're taking it serious. Like
it can't be okay.
It's in the middle of the road.
It's okay. It's just okay.
That's somebody who's like, it's okay. I got to see some boobs. I'm like, no, that's not the point.
Pete, that's great. That's a great story. Right there.
What a story, Pete.
What a story, Pete.
But yeah, so if I think about that, so one of the things I did want to just put a quick plug out for, and you guys have heard some of them, but How Did This Get Made as a podcast? If you like this kind of stuff, what I love about that podcast is even if you haven't seen the movie, sometimes it can be really good. And so I went back and I looked at the back catalog real quick. And right now there's a movie, Solar Babies, which I had seen back in the 80s, but John Mulaney's their guest. And even if you haven't seen it, I'll throw it on when I go out for a walk. I laugh so hard. And I've probably listened to that thing like 6 times now. But it's totally worth it.
I love John Mulaney.
Well, and that's the thing is sometimes, the other one, so Pete, I did notice Maximum Overdrive with Andy Daly is out there. And that's
nice.
They did the road twitch.
Yeah.
What the hell is a road twitch? So that was the thing is when I looked at so there are bad movies that people go like, oh, it's bad, but it's really entertaining. I mean, you guys just recently talked about Roadhouse. That totally fits the bill for kind of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But I do think like movies like Roadhouse or Face Off kind of fit in.
The ones I listed is Face Off.
Well, mm-hmm. and I feel like some of those kind of land in a different, like they're still kind of legit movies, right?
Well, they are. They're legit movies with legit people. They're not Tommy Wiseau.
And so that's the thing. It's like so my top 5 of like the things that would be just fun to watch because they're like this, like The Room, like they're completely incompetent. So I'm just gonna run through this list really fast. Number 5, I had No Holds Barred, starring Hulk Hogan. And that's another one that's got a How Did This Get Made? That's insanely funny. Mystery Science Theater, by far the best one I've ever seen, is one for a movie called Manos, The Hands of Fate, which translates to Hands, the Hands of Fate. But it's so hard to describe.
I have heard of that movie before as being like the worst movie ever made.
It is a hard. If it weren't for Mystery Science Theater, that would be one that would be really hard to watch. It's one of those cases where Mystery Science Theater amps up the entertainment value so much more. Number 3, and this is probably, I will say, the closest thing I've ever seen to The Room. It's an Asian guy. I can't remember if he's Vietnamese or if he's Chinese, but it's this guy who runs a dojo down in Miami or down in Orlando. So he got like a group of people together, filmed this really like kind of low budget looking action film down in Orlando that is inexplicably called The Miami Connection. And it is it's bonkers. Like when you're talking about a lot of the things that are great about The Room, Miami Connection's got a lot of that. And it is actually one of the rare ones where I go, the rewatchability on it's pretty good. Troll 2 is my number 2 on there. It's not related to the original Troll movie, which starred Julia Louis-Dreyfus. But
Wait a minute. I thought it was Jennifer Aniston.
no, that's Leprechaun 3.
Oh, Leprechaun. Okay.
Yeah. So no, you're thinking of Leprechaun 3, my man. So no, Troll 2 is like, again, it watching any of these once, if you like this kind of stuff, you will not regret it. It's obviously a rewrite that wasn't related to the original. It's set in a town called Nilbog, which the kid puts together at the end is goblin spelled backwards. Hence, it was never written to be troll. But there's anyway, it's a crazy movie. But then my number 1, it's a twofer. You guys have seen them, the Birdemic movies.
Yes.
And 1 and 2 are just as good as each of them is as good as the other.
I have not seen the second one actually.
But yeah,
hear
I
it's
watched that
fantastic.
myself I found it on like something and watched it myself.
The guy celebrating like by pumping his arms 22 times. Neat rock. And that's the thing is, I will say that
But that was a different Fargo trip. We all watched Birdemic together. You brought a new one into our lives. It was great.
Yes.
And to me, Birdemic, not in the same way as The Room, but each of those last 3 have some rewatchability factor. I'm going to say one thing before I throw it over to you guys, and that is, so one movie I thought would kind of land in that original category, the so bad it's good, but kind of legit movie. And I had recently rewatched it for something that we were talking about in here. Showgirls, I no longer put on that list. I don't find it entertaining. I find it depressing.
I haven't seen it for so long that I would probably agree.
There are moments that are bonkers, like she's overacting so hard, but there are moments in that movie that are just downright gross. And to the point where I was like, I now know that I will never watch this movie again.
That's a good transition though into my list, actually.
All right, let's do it.
So mine are not the only one I wrote down that's similar to yours. I wrote down Birdemic because that's the only movie that I've watched that I felt like really reaches the standard of The Room as far as like I don't think I'd ever watch it as many times, but I could watch that over and over with you guys. It would be fun.
Right.
And even the second one I remember now that I watched by myself. And I actually, because I'd seen the first one, like I could sit there and enjoy it. It'd be more fun with you. But they're just horrible movies. But there's enough there that entertains you that makes it worth that time as opposed to just like wasting your time.
Shut taking a shit.
So the other ones that I wrote down, I didn't really know what was, but these are all things that they're pretty bad, but they're still competent things. So they kind of fit that same mold of, I said, the Brady Bunch. The one TV show that I wrote down that's similar to that, and so Elizabeth Berkley, Saved by the Bell.
Yeah,
I could watch Saved by the Bell forever. And some of those episodes are just mind-bogglingly bad, and I don't care. I can still watch it. So that's one that I think kind of fits. You mentioned Face Off. I wrote down Roadhouse and Con Air.
Yep.
As another one, and then
Yes.
Another one that kind of fit that Dave you're probably be upset about, but the movie Fear, which we may talk about someday, with Mark Wahlberg and Reese Witherspoon.
No,
I love that movie, but it's it's pretty dumb. Yet I don't know. I don't know if it goes on this list or not.
It's dumb, but you can't take your eyes off it.
Yeah.
Plus,
and then
poster scene.
I'm a big fan of these dumb teen movies. It started back. I just rewatched License to Drive recently. It's so dumb, but I could watch it again. I wrote down, and some of these aren't as bad. Like Can't Hardly Wait's actually, I think, a pretty decent movie. I just watched that. But like that, She's All That, Never Been Kissed. I watch all those stupid movies, and some of them are better than others. And then the last thing I had is another thing we may talk about someday I brought up earlier. I I don't like most reality TV shows, but my wife and I have watched every single episode that's ever existed of Temptation Island.
I knew that's what you're gonna say.
And then we watched a show on Netflix like a year ago that came out called Too Hot to Handle, which was very similar. And those kind of really trashy dating shows with all these beautiful people, I can't get enough of those. And they're so good. And what's great though is we watch them together and she loves them too. That's why they're fun to watch. I don't think I'd have much fun by myself, but
Well, and I do think that's part of the
it's that shared experience with somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And being
That's
able to
very
laugh
romantic.
about how ridiculous
Yeah.
it is with somebody. Yeah.
All right,
Totally.
Pete, do you have anything
All right.
to add?
I've got a couple. I don't have a full top 5 list per se, but a couple of ones do come to mind. First one that came to mind for me was Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan.
Very specific one.
That
Where
is
he punches a dude's head off
Yeah.
on a roof, punches it off, and it flies off the roof.
Kind of like pulling a guy's throat
It
out.
lands,
like a
if I
rope.
remember correctly, it lands right in a dumpster, and then the dumpster closes right on top of it. And it's totally fake. Like actually, a lot of those horror movies would fall into this category. There's probably
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 of the Friday the 13th movies that you could put on this list. Jaws 4 is another one that's up there for me.
Well,
I remember watching.
I've never seen that one, but I've heard so much about it that yeah.
It is, and there is a "How Did This Get Made" about that one.
Yes, there
that
is.
is absolutely hilarious, and it is so bad. Michael Caine is in it. You got Mario Van Peebles, but the concept, the entire concept of the shark and how it came to find this family that it was trying to get revenge on the family, just absolutely ridiculous. The other one, Dave,
heard that movie. What movie is it where they mention that movie and they say Jaws Part 4: The Revenge? And for years, I thought it was a joke. I thought they
No,
were
that
referring
is-
to a made-up Jaws movie.
that's the
It-
real name of the movie.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But there's a movie where they reference it, and I thought that it was a joke they were making.
Like they were doing the whole Rocky 89.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Or like ESPN, the Ocho. You know, it's.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I
But
wish
yeah,
I could
that
think
is-
of it.
Yeah, that's legit the movie.
So yeah,
Right.
and then I found that out later, and
He's able. By the way, the concept, just real quickly, is that the family is from like Maine, right? Where the Amity Beach
It's like it's by Cape Cod or whatever. It's Amity.
or Massachusetts, Amity
Yeah.
and whatever, and the shark or descendants of the shark, the original shark, follow them all the way down to the Bahamas. Because it can like sniff out the family, and the shark is mad because they killed
It's a
him.
blood feud. It's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
in that How Did This Get Made? Because I haven't seen Jaws: The Revenge in forever. They
Which-
talk about how at one point the shark breaches and it screams, and they're like, "That's not a thing." Which, by the way, sorry, Pete.
neither
real
is
quick.
punching a guy's head off into a dumpster or
Right.
pulling a guy's throat out.
Well,
It's just.
So hold on, just because we are talking about Jason Mantzoukas is in The Disaster Artist, and my favorite thing when they're screening the movie is when Denny is jumping on the bed, and Mantzoukas is seeing this for the first time, and he goes, "I don't care for that at all." Oh
Just-
God, I love that guy.
Lastly, the one I want to mention in the same vein, Dave, of when you see it on Mystery Science Theater, it's hilarious. The one that stands out on that one for me is Mac and Me. If you
And I
watch the
still
mystery,
have to
that one's
watch
on
that.
Netflix. That one's on Netflix
Yeah.
because they have the newer series and they did it. They did it on that one, so it's hilarious.
Baylor and I were gonna watch it one night. I got about 10 minutes in, and then something came up where we had to turn it off. Because I was trying to explain to her the concept of Mystery Science Theater. I thought
Right.
she'd like it. And we got about 10 minutes in, and I just, it wasn't because we weren't into it, but something came up. We had to turn it off. And yeah, so I do want to see that one. But
And that's the one that I swear to God, we talked about this once before. I swear to God, the world
Right.
premiere was in Pipestone, Minnesota. Somehow I have this memory of that, and I don't know. Somebody looked it up and said I was wrong, but I'm going with that story. I don't care.
all right. Do you guys want to do a quick? Did you guys do 2009 movies?
Yeah, so we can finish this off. We haven't talked about good movies yet this year, so we can finish this off with our favorite real movies of 2009. And I actually have pretty much a top 5 this time, and not a top 30.
I'll go first. My list was I did have 5, but this year there wasn't a ton of movies that really just jumped out at me. Like, yeah, these were like 1989. There's 1,000 movies you could pick from, but there was barely 5 or 6.
I don't have a
that
long
jumped out
list,
at me.
but the ones that are on my list are like these are all timers that I really love.
So I had I'll just start off. Topping my list was The Hangover. I actually thought that was older than 2009, but when I looked online, it came out in 2009. So I actually liked the first Fast and the Furious movie. The whole series actually. Jenny really got into it. Like, she watched the entire series from start to finish. But the first one actually is pretty good.
So to that point on that one, Pete, I thought that was earlier. Like, I would have guessed that was like a 2000.
I looked it up, and I thought so too. Yeah,
you're right. But for some reason, I didn't think the franchise was that young.
Well, it seems like they were coming out with a new movie every single year. Right. And that's basically what they're doing, because there's like 10 of them. And
those first 3 did not come out
8
like
at
bang,
least.
bang, bang. Tokyo Drift, like, for, they're very easily, the franchise could have died on Tokyo Drift.
Yeah.
The fourth one is the one where it did well enough where they're like, we got to make one of these every year now.
Is Vin Diesel in all of them?
I think Tokyo Drift might be is he in the second one? The second one's directed by John Singleton.
I thought he was.
See, I think that one might have Paul Walker and not Vin Diesel.
Oh, maybe.
But
I talking about Fast and the Furious and movies, it made me think of SNL last week where he did his The movies are back. The sticky floors. The movies. I just love that. So funny. The previews.
The
next
price popcorn.
The kid in the bathroom with his pants all the way down.
That was the best one. Kid peeing with his pants down.
All right, sorry.
Next one I had was Bruno, which
that movie.
I liked it. I thought it was funny. There was disturbing parts with those Sacha Baron Cohen movies.
I liked Borat, but I got sick of it by the end. And then this movie was just kind of like the whole thing was just it's not good.
Yeah. Okay, my favorite part though is, and I do wonder like how much risk he puts himself at. So, here's Bruno, this flamingly homosexual character, going out on a camping trip with like some real Deliverance level dudes, right? And he's pushing their buttons. He's doing all this stuff. So you can tell that these guys are all super annoyed with him. And at the end of the night, they're all sitting around the fire and they're commenting, and he goes, looking at all the stars in the sky just makes me think of all the hot dudes that are out in the world. and they had all been reminiscing, and that was his reminiscence. And they all had to sit in it for a second, and I know that, and you can just see them doing they're
like looking at each other.
We're gonna kill this guy. I thought it was the best. Anyway, sorry.
The Blind Side I thought was a good movie that came out that year, but it
never seen the movie.
It disturbs me though that Michael Oher is so pissed off about the movie because like none of it was true. Like he'll tell you that they made him out to be a total idiot in the movie, like he knew nothing about football, which wasn't true at all. Like he played football and he knew the game. It's not like he just had never heard of football before.
It's also funny that you would pick that movie because anybody that knows you would know that.
I know. I don't like Sandra Bullock. That's how thin this year was.
I get it.
Why do you despise Sandra Bullock?
Funny, you haven't picked any movies yet that I have. So
Inglourious Bastards was on my list, and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, just because it was part of the Harry Potter series. It came out that year, so I threw it on my list. But
I'll go next. I think Dave.
That's all I had. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
All right, so I'll go for number 5. I did have a 3-way tie because I only found 8 movies that I really liked. It was kind of slim pickings for like a lot of movies. But The Dark Knight. You didn't say The Dark Knight, Pete.
Dark Knight came out in 2008, dude.
Well, how do I have
I was like when I
Because
googled that year, I
it's
didn't.
that whole box office mojo thing where it made a lot of money in 2009.
But I usually don't look at. Okay, well, okay, then take that one off.
Yeah,
Jesus.
when
Um,
the year Kai Ming was born, that next year, like I jokingly said one other time, I went to 3 movies that year, and 2 of them were The Dark Knight in 2008. She was born in 7.
the other 2 I had tied were Funny People, the Judd Apatow movie with Adam Sandler, which I've only seen once, but I know I really liked it.
Yep.
It's up like most of his movies. It was really long, probably too long, but I still thought it was really well done, actually. And then Zombieland was another movie I really loved from that year. And we went to that together too.
Yep.
The top 4 though, these are like these are movies I can watch all the time. So and they're all different. I have a cartoon, I have a comedy, I have like an adult movie, and like a
Ooh, an adult
like an
movie.
action, not adult like that. So number 4 is Up. Up came out that year.
Yep.
Really? That one?
Like
That
one
was
of the
that
best
year?
Pixar movies.
It
Yep.
didn't show up on my when I googled 2009 movies.
It's like it was like the number 5 movie of that year.
Number 3 was
Wow.
the one overlap we had, Inglourious Bastards, which I still think the first 20 minutes of that movie is the most greatest cinematic scene ever created, where Christoph Waltz goes to that French farm and
they're hiding under the
nothing beats
floorboards.
that. But then the whole movie's great. Number 2, Up in the Air with George Clooney. That's my adult movie. That's my for older people. I love that movie. I love Clooney. I love the movie. It's just a great story. And then number 1, Pete, you're missing a really great one. The comedy, I Love You, Man, which is another movie I saw in Fargo after a marathon one year. Actually, we ran the 5K, but
Okay.
that movie is one of my all-time favorite
Do you
comedies.
want some synergy with the podcast?
That's a good tie-in. I know where you're going, Dave.
The Room billboard is in that movie.
Oh, yeah?
And part of the reason was it's Paul Rudd, those guys, it's a lot of those guys that were quoted in that Entertainment Weekly article. So they specifically had a scene where he was walking on that street so that they could have that billboard in the movie. Is that, Pete, that's what
Yep.
you knew that too?
That's
Pete,
what I
have
was.
you
I
seen that
did
movie?
know that. I don't recall having seen it. No, I
Oh
don't
my
think I've
gosh,
seen
well,
it.
Then you need to watch it.
I got to get on it. I know.
Slap that bass, Pete.
Yeah.
All right.
Slap
time.
that bass. All right. Well, so I when I was looking at the list here, there's a lot of movies that I remember really enjoying, and it's weird though. There are times. So one of my favorite movies the last handful of years, but I've only seen it once, was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That didn't come out this year, but I would say that there's a lot of movies that are like that on this, because as much as I was looking at this list and thinking, wow, I really like these movies, I only saw them once. And so the movies that I have, The Hangover was one I thought about putting on there. I never saw The Hangover in the theater. I saw it after the fact. And I think part of this was so many of these movies I was seeing on video afterwards, and it was just because I had young kids. I wasn't getting out to the theaters much. So I was late to the whole Hangover thing, and I got to be honest, as much as I liked it, I thought it was kind of overrated.
I think
So
it's
I
way
didn't put
overrated.
that one-
I mean, it was fine, but
Yeah.
people act like it's one of the greatest comedies of all time.
I thought it was funny.
Better movie.
So what I would say, and you guys mentioned some of the other ones that I really liked, that I would have put in my honorable mentions. So I'm not going to get into that. So my number 5, and I struggle with this a little bit, I'm going to put Watchmen by Zack Snyder on there. And I really love the book, the comic book. The series on HBO was awesome. Zack Snyder is a filmmaker who frustrates me. But I do think he did a good job with the book. He basically just made it frame for frame. And so I did like it. That's one I saw at the zoo in IMAX with Hummel. And so I really did like that movie. Number 4, I put Up on there, just because, I mean, Up is one of those movies. If I put it in, if I watched it tomorrow with the girls, I'd be bawling during that opening credit part or the opening montage. I could see it 100 times and I'd be crying every time. Number 3 for me is Gran Torino. I really liked Gran Torino. I have only seen it once.
I like that movie too.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is there's other ones. So like Slumdog Millionaire was this year. The Hurt Locker was this year. Yeah, they're on the Box Office Mojo list.
And I think Slumdog Millionaire is from 2008 too.
So
it is.
It is Slumdog is?
Yeah,
okay.
I just looked it up.
I did look the Hurt Locker.
So is Gran Torino. They both are. That's why I didn't see those on my list.
Oh, dang it. All right. Well, then I got one I'll throw in there instead. District 9. Crazy sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, really cool. My number 2, and this has everything to do with the theater experience, Paranormal Activity. I loved seeing that in the theater. They had one of these trailers where they showed like the people reacting to it. And I had so much fun watching this one in the theater. Part of it was I am a sleepwalker. And as they're getting possessed, the guy starts sleepwalking and they'll show like these time-lapse videos of him getting out of bed and like coming over and staring at his wife in the bed. And I kept thinking like, oh my God, that could be me one day,
Speaking of that,
nice.
Last night, I just watched the Blair Witch Project again because I listened to the podcast.
Oh, really?
The Hey, do you remember one? Yeah.
And it made me think I should watch it again. And it doesn't do a whole lot for you to watch it by yourself now. But you and me went to the Uptown Theater, and the experience of that movie was one that I will never forget. I stood in line to buy tickets that day. I was scared out of my mind that night. And it was, you could never replicate that again. I mean, you could only do it that one time.
I was pissed off because the sound guy looked exactly like me, and I was like,
he did look like you.
Yeah, I did not notice that.
Whatever his name was.
I thought I was thinking the whole first time I saw it looks exactly like Dave.
And I was like,
exactly.
And of course,
see it,
he's a little.
No, I should turn it back on just to double check.
I think you guys used to tell me to go stand in the corner and stare at the wall because of that guy.
Not just because of that guy either. We just wanted you to shut up.
And again, it's my number 1. But I only have seen this once. I'm going back through this guy's films to watch them all, and I'm at this one. This is the next one once I get time to watch. But it is Inglourious Bastards. When I saw it, I loved it.
And that's my favorite Tarantino movie, I think.
It's not my favorite of his because I really like a lot of his other ones, but it's up there. And it's weird that I've only seen it the one time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's it for me.
Pete, you know what it's time for?
It's time to close the yearbook, Brad.
That's right. Use a little bit longer episodes, kind of supersized, but that's because, special month and Dave is a talker.
Special month, special guest, yes.
Well, I it's been fun, guys.
Well, it was great to have you, and I'm glad others are going to get to hear this with you, so.
All right. Well, we'll wrap that up and give you a little preacher row here. Thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Oh, bye, guys.
No one's gonna comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your song is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Next time, tell me on my plan. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I can do.